On a forgotten fringe of the Andromeda arm where stars flickered like dying embers, a lone vessel drifted through the silent dark, its hull scarred by battle, its crew exhausted from weeks of running. The ship named the Dusk Runner carried the last remnants of a human strike force that had ventured too far beyond known space. They had engaged an unknown enemy near the Helix Nebula and barely escaped with their lives. Now they floated in a dead zone where sensors barely worked and comms crackled. With ghost signals, inside the ship the air smelled of burnt wiring and stale coffee. Lila sat alone in the comms bay, her fingers resting lightly on the console, her eyes half closed. She was not sleeping but listening. The others thought she was just tired. But Lila heard something no one else did, a whisper in the static, soft and strange like wind, through crystal chimes it had started 3 days ago, right after the last battle. And it would not stop. Lila was not like the others. She had always been quiet, observant, the kind of person who noticed when someone changed their tone, or when a machine hummed a fraction too high. She had joined the fleet not for glory, but because she felt something pulling her out here into the black, as if space itself had been calling her name in a language only she could almost understand. Captain Dunn entered the bay, his boots heavy on the metal floor. He was a broad man with a face carved by stress and sunless years in deep space. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, still hearing things. Lila, she did not look up, just nodded. "It's not nothing, sire." He sighed, rubbing his temple. "We lost 12 good people out there, Lila. We can't chase ghosts." "But this isn't a ghost," she said, finally turning to face him, her eyes clear and steady. "It has a pattern. A rhythm like it wants to be found." Dunn studied her for a long moment, then glanced at the sensor readout on the wall. A faint anomaly blinked near the edge of their range. A derelict station orbiting a dead moon long abandoned by any known civilization, all right, he said slowly. "We check it out, but if it's a trap we run no heroics." "Thank you, sir." The Dusk Runner changed course, its engines groaning softly as it turned toward the signal. The closer they got, the stronger the whisper became. Lila could almost make out words, not in any human tongue, but in something older, smoother like water. Over stone, when they reached the station, it loomed against the black, a skeletal ring of metal and glass half melted by some ancient fire. It spun slowly, as if dreaming the moon below was gray and lifeless, cratered and cold. No atmosphere. No heat, just silence. Scans show no power. "No life signs, no movement," said Tanner, the young sensor tech. His voice tight, with nerves, "but the signal is coming from inside." Lila insisted. Dunn ordered a team suited up, 2 Marines, Lila and himself. They crossed the void in a shuttle. The silence outside was total. No wind, no sound, just the soft hiss of their own breath inside. Their helmets, they docked at an airlock that should not have worked. But did the door slide open with a sigh of stale air inside? The station was dark, but not empty. The walls were lined with strange glyphs, glowing faintly blue, and the floor was smooth. Like polished bone. Lila led the way. Her boots clicking softly, she followed the sound. It grew clearer with every step, not just in her ears, but in her chest, like a second heartbeat. Then they found it, a chamber at the heart of the station circular. With a domed ceiling made of crystal that shimmered even in the dim light. In the center stood a pod, tall and slender, cracked open from the inside, and inside the pod stood a woman. She was tall, with skin like pale silver, and long hair that seemed to catch the light even though there was none. Her ears tapered to delicate points and her eyes glowed faintly. Amber, she wore a suit of woven fibers that shimmered like liquid starlight. Everyone froze. The Marines raised their rifles, but Lila stepped forward slowly, hands open. "She is not armed," Lila said. The woman turned her head slowly, as if waking from a long sleep. Her gaze fell on Lila, and something passed between them, a flicker of recognition. Then from the shadows behind the pod, something uncurled. It was no bigger than a large dog, but its presence filled the room. It moved like smoke given form, its body covered in scales that shifted color with every breath, deep violet, then silver, then black. Its eyes were wide and intelligent and fixed on Lila. Dragon whispered Dunn. The woman spoke, then her voice melodic and layered like many voices speaking at once. "She does not understand you." Lila said, surprising herself. But she did. She understood every word the woman had not spoken in sound, but in feeling and image and memory. Her name is Alara, Lila said softly. And this is Nyx, how? Do you know that? Alara took a step forward, her bare feet silent on the floor. She raised a hand, not in threat but in offering. Lila reached out, and their fingers almost touched when alarms blared through the comm. Captain, we've got incoming ships, multiple contacts, fast and silent. Dunn cursed and turned to the Marines. Get back to the shuttle now. But Lila did not move. They're coming for her, she said. Who? The ones who destroyed her home, the ones who hunt her kind. How do you know? Because I heard them in the static. Alara looked at Lila, then at the ceiling as if she could see through the metal and stone. To the stars beyond, her expression changed from calm to sharp focus. They are here outside the station. 3 ships dropped out of warp, black and jagged like shards of obsidian. They made no sound. No engine flare, just appeared as if space itself had torn open to let them through. Crother Dunn breathed. Lila had never heard the name, but the dread in his voice told her everything. Alara turned to Nyx and placed a hand on the dragon's head. The creature lowered itself. Then, in a blur of motion, leaped onto her shoulder, its claws gentle on her skin. We have to go? Lila sighed. Alara nodded but did not move toward the door. Instead, she looked at Lila and spoke again. Not in words, but in a single image. A memory of a child with human eyes and silvery hands. Lila staggered as if struck. What was that? You are more than you know, Alara said in perfect English, her voice now clear and human. How your blood remembers. Before Lila could respond, the station shook a blast. Hit the outer ring, metal screamed and lights flickered. Move, shouted, done. They ran through the twisting corridors, Nyx leaping ahead, scouting the path. Alara moved with impossible grace. Silent and swift, Lila struggled to keep up, her heart pounding. Not just from fear, but from the strange pull in her chest, like something inside her was waking up. They reached the shuttle just as another blast rocked the station. The Marines were already inside. Engines running. Getting done, yelled. Alara paused at the ramp. She looked back toward the heart of the station. Then at Lila. They took everything she said. But, not this. She held out her hand. Come with me. Lila hesitated only a second, then took it. The shuttle launched just as the station collapsed behind them. The Crothar ships turned but did not follow, as if they knew something. The humans did not. Inside the shuttle, Alara sat quietly. Nyx curled at her feet, his eyes half closed but alert. Who are you? Lila asked. Alara looked at her with those glowing amber eyes. I am the last of the Silthari, and you, Lila, are the first of something new. Lila said nothing. She just stared out the viewport at the stars. The whisper in her mind was gone, replaced by something deeper, quieter. A silence that waited, and for the first time in her life, she did not feel alone. Back aboard the Dusk Runner, tension hung thick in the air. The crew moved quietly, eyes darting toward the guest quarters where Alara and Nyx had been given space to rest. No one knew what to make of them. Some whispered that they were weapons. Others, that they were ghosts or worse, curses wrapped in beauty. Lila sat alone in the mess hall, nursing a cup of cold synth tea. Her mind racing, she kept replaying the moment Alara had spoken in perfect English, how she had known her name without being told. In that image, the child with human eyes and silvery hands, it clung to her like a second skin. Captain Dunn entered and sat across from her. He looked older than he had that morning, lines deeper around his eyes. You okay? She nodded but did not speak. You've been quiet even for you. She looked up at him then. What if I'm not just human? He leaned back as if bracing himself. What do you mean? Alara said. My blood remembers. She said it like it was fact. Not guess. Dunn rubbed his jaw. We scanned her when she came aboard. No known DNA matches, no implants, no tech. Just biology, but not ours. And Nyx shook his head. Not an animal, not a machine. Something else entirely. Lila stared into her cup. They're running from something bigger than us. Before Dunn could answer, the ship shuddered. A low groan ran through the hull, lights flickered, then stabilized. Report came over the comm sensors, just lit up. Captain, multiple contacts emerging from subspace, same signature as before. Crotheries, sir, and they're not stopping. Dunn stood quickly. Battle stations, alarms blared through the ship, red lights pulsed. Lila followed Dunn to the bridge. The crew moved fast, strapping in checking systems. The view screen showed 3 black ships hanging in the void, silent and still. There, not hailing, not broadcasting, nothing. Just watching, Lila said. Why, because they know she is here. As if on cue, Alara appeared at the bridge doorway, Nyx at her heels. The crew tensed, but she ignored them. Her eyes fixed on the screen. They have come for the resonance, she said. The what? The song inside me, the one your kind cannot hear, but she looked at Lila. Lila felt it. Then a low hum beneath the ship, a vibration in her bones. What do we do? Dunn asked Run. Ilara said simply, we can't outrun them, not with their tech. Then I will sing. No one moved for a long moment, singing. Yes, Lila understood before anyone else did. She means to fight with sound. Alara nodded. Sound is not just noise, it is shape, it is force, it is memory. The Crother fear it because they have none of their own. Dunn looked at Lila. You trust her? I don't know, but I believe her. That will have to do. Ilara walked to the center of the bridge and closed her eyes. Nyx circled her. Once then lay down his head on his paws. His scales dimming too. Near black she began to hum. Started soft, barely audible, but the ship responded. Lights dimmed. Consoles flickered. The air grew heavy. Then she opened her mouth and sang. It was not a song anyone had ever heard before. It had no words, only tones that bent and twisted like living things. The sound filled the bridge, not loud but deep, as if it came from the core of the planet. They had never seen. Outside, the Crother ships twitched. One of them jerked sideways as if struck by an invisible hand. What is happening? Tanner, the sensor tech, whispered. Their hulls are vibrating at a frequency that should tear them apart, but they're holding. Not for long. Lila sighed. Alara's voice rose higher, clearer. The notes sharp as glass. The nearest Crother ship cracked. Down the middle, light flared from within. Then it exploded, not with fire but with silence. A perfect void where sound ceased to exist. The other 2 ships recoiled, pulling back into subspace in seconds. The bridge was quiet. Ilara collapsed. Lila caught her before she hit the floor. Her skin was cold, her breath shallow. Nyx whined and pressed close, his body warm against her. Get medbay ready, Dunn ordered. They carried her to the infirmary. The ship doctor, a gruff woman named Rios, ran scans but found nothing wrong physically. Her energy is drained, Rios said, like a battery pushed too far. How long? You don't know. Lila stayed by her side through the night. Nyx refused to leave either. He lay curled at the foot of the bed, his eyes never leaving Alarabi. Morning she stirred. You saved us, Lila said. No, she whispered. You listened, that is how it works. The song needs ears that understand. Why me? Because you carry the echo of my people, of the ones who came before, of the ones who tried to warn your kind long ago. Lila sat back. So I'm part Silthera, not part something else. You are a bridge, a meeting place. That made less sense, not more, but Lila did not argue. What happens now? The Crother will not stop, they never do. Then we stop them. Alara looked at her. With tired eyes. It is not that simple. It has to be done. Entered then. His expression grim. We picked up a distress call from the outer rim. A mining colony called Virel. They were human until last month. Now they're silent. Alara sat up slowly. The Crother have been there. How do you know? I can feel the silence they left behind. Lila stood. We have to go. Dunn hesitated. It's a trap. Probably. But if they took people, we have to try. He looked at Alaric. And you fight again? Not yet. But Lila can learn. Lila blinked. Me, you heard the song, you felt it, you can be taught. Dunn sighed. All right, we go, but we go smart. They prepared the ship quietly, loading extra power cells, reinforcing the shields. Lila spent hours with Alara in the cargo bay. A quiet space far from prying ears said. Alara said. Lila sat cross-legged on the floor. Nyx lay beside her, his head in her lap. Close your eyes. She did not listen, not with your ears, with your blood, Lila tried. It felt foolish at first. Then she felt it. A faint pulse like a second heartbeat. That is the resonance, she said. What do I do with it? Shapeth thou with memory, with feeling, with truth. Alara began to hum again, soft and slow. This time Lila did not just hear it. She felt it move through her like water finding its path. Try, she said. Lila took a breath and made a sound low and shaky. Alara smiled. Good now again, but think of something real. Something that matters. Lila thought of her mother who had died when she was 6. She remembered the smell of her hair, the sound of her laugh, the way she used to sing while cooking. She sang again. This time the note held steady. The air around her shimmered faintly. Nix lifted his head and made a soft chime-like sound. "You did it," Ilara said. It felt like nothing. It was everything. The first note is always the hardest. They practiced for hours until Lila's throat ached and her head spun. But each time the sound grew stronger, clearer. Later that night, Lila dreamed. She stood on a world of silver trees and violet skies. A city of crystal towers rose in the distance, and in the center a great tree pulsed with light. People moved through the streets, tall and graceful, with eyes like stars. They sang as they walked, their voices weaving together into a single living song. Then the sky turned black. Ships fell like stones, burning the city. The song broke into screams. A woman ran toward her holding a child. The woman's face was blurred, but her voice was clear. "Take her, hide her. Let her grow." The woman pressed the child into Lila's arms. But when Lila looked down, the child was herself. She woke, gasping. Ilara stood in the doorway. "You saw it, yes, that was my home. That was the day they came for us. Why show me?" "Because you were there in another life or another thread of time. You were chosen then, and you are chosen now." Lila rubbed her face. "I don't want to be chosen. I just want to help. That is enough." The next morning, the dusk runner jumped too. Virel, the colony, was dark. No lights, no signals, no movement. They landed near the main dome. Suits, sealed weapons. Ready inside, the dome was empty. Tables still set, food half-eaten, tools lying where they were dropped, but no people. No bodies. Then Lila heard it. A hum, low and wrong, like a machine trying to mimic a heartbeat. "Follow me," she said. They moved through the corridors until they reached the central chamber. In the middle of the room floated a sphere, black and smooth, pulsing with that same wrong hue. Ilara went pale. The hollow core. What is it? A machine that eats songs. It takes the resonance from living minds and turns it into power. They took the colonists, yes, to feed it. Lila felt sick. "Can we stop it?" "Not yet, it is too strong, but we can delay it." "How?" "Be leaving a counter." Songalara stepped forward and placed her hand on the sphere. She closed her eyes and began to sing softly. The notes wrapped around the hum, fighting it, pushing back. The sphere flickered. Lila joined her, voice shaky at first, then stronger. Nick stood guard, his body tense, his eyes glowing. The hum weakened. Then alarms blared. "Crother ships. They have to finish." Dunn shouted over the comms. Ilara sang harder. Blood trickled from her nose. Lila pushed through the pain in her throat, her voice rising to meet Ilara's. The sphere cracked. Light burst from within, then went dark. They did it. Run, they sprinted. Back to the ship, Crother troops poured into the dome, black armored figures with no faces. The dusk runner lifted off just as the first shots hit back in space. They watched as the colony dome collapsed in on itself. Ilara slept for 2 days. When she woke, she looked at Lila and said, "You are ready for what?" For the war. Lila did not argue. She knew it was true. The Crothar would keep coming, and this time they would be ready to sing back. Weeks passed aboard the Dusk Runner. The ship now carried more than just a crew. It carried a secret, a hope, and a growing fear. Lila spent every spare moment with Ilara, learning to shape sound, not just as noise, but as force, as shield, as weapon. Nix watched them both. His presence calm but alert. His scales now pulsed with a faint blue light that no one could explain. The crew had changed, too. Some still eyed Ilara with suspicion, but others brought her small gifts. A warm blanket, a cup of real tea, a carved wooden bird found in storage. They did not speak her language, but they were learning to trust her through action. Not words. Lila, however, was changing in ways no one could see. She no longer slept through the night. When she did sleep, she dreamed of silver forests and burning skies. She woke with songs on her lips, songs she had never heard before yet knew by heart. One morning, during a routine scan of the veiled nebula, Tanner called from the bridge. His voice tight. "Captain, you need to see this." Dunn and Lila arrived together. The view screen showed the nebula swirling in soft purples and blues. But at its heart, something glowed. Not a star, but a steady, rhythmic pulse. "It's artificial," Lila sighed. Ilara appeared behind them. Silent, as always, but her eyes widened. The hollow core is moving, how do you know? I feel its hunger. Dunn turned to her. You said it was destroyed on Virelli, it was only a piece. This is the true core. The heart of their machine. Lila felt a chill. Not from fear, but from recognition. The pulse matched the rhythm in her dreams, the same beat that had haunted her since childhood. We need to get closer, Lila said. Are you sure? Yes. They took a shuttle. Nix curled in the back, his head resting on his paws. Alara sat beside Lila, her hand resting lightly on hers as they entered the nebula. The shuttle shuddered, not from turbulence but from something deeper. The air inside grew thick. The lights dimmed. Lila gripped the control. It's pulling us. No, Alara said. It is calling. Ulila did not argue. She felt it too. A tug in her chest like a thread tied to her ribs. They reached the source, a massive structure hidden within the nebula. Not built, but grown black tendrils wrapped around a sphere of shifting light. The hollow. Coriat was larger than a city, and it was alive. Nix lifted his head and made a low sound. Not a growl, but a warning. Then, without warning, he leapt from the shuttle. Alara gasped at Nix. He flew toward the core, his small form glowing brighter with every second. Lila tried to follow, but Alara held her back. Wait, why, he must do this alone. They watched as Nix reached the core and pressed his body against it. Light flared, then dimmed, then flared again. Suddenly, Lila screamed. Clutching her head, images flooded her mind. Not dreams this time, but memories. A Silthari woman standing before a council of elders holding a newborn child. The child had human features, but her eyes glowed amber like Alara's. We cannot keep her here, the elders said. She is the bridge. The woman replied, if the Krothar find her, they will tear her apart to learn her song, then send her away. To where? To the quiet ones, the ones who forget their own names, Earth. The vision shifted. A small house on a green hill. A human man and woman holding the child. Now wrapped in cloth. They did not know her true name, so they called her Lila Shea. Grew up laughing, running through fields, singing songs she did not know the words to, but every night the stars watched and waited. Lila collapsed. Sobbing, Alara caught her. You, remember now, I was sent away to Hide Eyes to live as human until the time came. And now the core knows you too. Nix returned, then his body weak, his scales dull. He landed in the shuttle and curled at Lila's feet. His breath shallow. Alara placed a hand on his side and closed her eyes. He gave himself to see the truth. What did he learn? The Krothar are not just destroying worlds. They are harvesting resonance, the very essence of thought and memory. They feed it to the core to power a final weapon, one that can silence entire galaxies. Lila looked at the core, its pulse now louder in her mind. How do we stop it? We cannot, not yet. Then what? We prepare back on the Dusk Runner. Lila told Dunn everything. The captain listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat in silence for a long time. So you are not fully human. No, does it change who you are? No, then it changes nothing for us. She almost cried. But it changes everything for me. That night, Lila stood on the observation deck staring into the nebula. The core's pulse echoed in her bones. Alara joined her. You are afraid, yes, of what? Of becoming something I don't recognize. You will always be Lila. That is your anchor, your human name, your human heart. That is what makes your song strong. Ours was pure, but yours is real. Nix lay at their feet, his breathing slow but steady. I hear it, Lila whispered. The core, it calls to me like a mother to a child. Because it was built to mimic us, it wants what you have. What a soul that chooses. Lila turned to Elaridich. Me everything. For the next days, Lila trained harder than ever. She learned to shape silence as well as sound, to weave memory into melody, to turn pain into power. But the dreams grew worse. She saw the core opening like a flower, swallowing stars whole. She saw human cities falling silent one by one. She saw herself standing before it. Her hands outstretched, her mouth open in a scream with no sound. Then one night she woke not from a dream but from a call. The core was singing to her, not a threat, not a lure but a question. Will you come? She sat up, heart pounding. Alara was already at her door. You heard it. Yes, it is ready. For what? For you, Lila stood. Then I will go, not alone, never again. They gathered the crew. Dunn gave the order. They would not attack, they would not hide, they would stand and face what came. As the Dusk Runner turned toward the nebula, Lila stood on the bridge, her hands steady, her voice. Call me, I'm not just human. No one argued because she was something more, and something more was what the universe needed now. The ship entered the nebula. The core pulsed brighter in welcome. Leela closed her eyes and began to hum-nod in fear, but in answer, the Dusk Runner emerged from the veiled nebula. Not alone behind it flew a ragged fleet of rebel ships patched together from salvaged hulls and stolen tech, humans and aliens side by side, all that remained of those who had resisted the Crother. The fleet was small, but their will was sharp. Leela stood on the bridge, her hands resting on the console. She no longer flinched at the core's call. It had become a part of her, like a second breath. Ilara stood beside her, Nyx at their feet, his body still weak but his eyes bright with purpose. Captain Dunn gave the order all ships form wedge pattern target. The outer spires do not engage the core directly. Not yet. Leela knew why they could not attack the heart. Not until she was ready. The Crothar fortress hung in space, a monstrous structure built inside the swirling ring of a collapsed black hole. Its spires twisted like claws, its surface pulsing with the same dark rhythm as the hollow Koreas the fleet approached. Silence fell, no comms, no warnings. Just the hum of engines and the beat of Lila's heart. Then the fortress opened, ships poured out, black and silent, hundreds of them. Battle began, lasers cut through the void, explosions bloomed like dying flowers. The rebel fleet fought with everything they had. But the Crother were endless. Lila watched the chaos, but her mind was elsewhere. She felt the core inside the fortress waiting. We have to go in, she said. Dunn nodded. Shuttle bay is ready. Ilara touched Leela's arm. Are you sure? No. But it does not matter. They boarded the shuttle, Nyx leaping in last, his claws clicking softly on the floor. The ship launched into the storm, weaving through fire and debris. As they neared the fortress, time began to bend. The stars outside stretched. Then, snapped. The shuttle groaned as if caught in a giant hand inside. Lila gasped. Visions flooded her. Not dreams this time, but memories of her real mother. The Silthari woman who had held her as a baby and whispered a song into her ear. A song that was not just lullaby, but Mapakia promise. You will find your way back. The shuttle docked on a spire near the core's chamber. The air outside was thick with static. Every step felt heavy, as if walking through water. They moved quickly through twisting corridors, the walls alive with shifting glyphs that pulsed in time with the core. Then they reached the inner gate. It was sealed. Lila placed her hand on the surface and sang a single note, soft and clear. The gate opened. Inside the chamber was vast, a cavern of black crystal with the hollow core floating at its center. A sphere of shifting darkness ringed with veins of red light, and standing before it, a figure tall and skeletal wrapped in robes of bone. The Crothar Emperor. He turned slowly, his face hidden in shadow, so the echo returned. Silara stepped forward. You destroyed my world, and I will silence your... His voice was not sound, but absence, a hole where noise should. Leela felt her throat tighten. You took everything from her. The Emperor laughed, a dry sound like breaking glass. She was weak, her song faded because her people had no fire. You humans burn bright, but fast. You will be gone before you learn to sing properly. Nyx growled low and deep. The Emperor turned his head. Ah, the little dragon. Still alive, how quaint. He raised a hand and the air twisted. Nyx screamed, not in pain but in rupture. His body tore at the edges, light leaking out. Ilara lunged, but the Emperor flicked his wrist and she crashed against the wall. Lila stood alone. The core pulsed faster, calling to her. You were made to serve it. The Emperor said, come feed it your song and I will let your friends live. Leela looked at Ilara, bleeding on the floor, at Nyx, struggling to stand. Then she looked at the core and smiled. You think I am afraid of silence? She stepped forward. But silence is where songs begin. She closed her eyes and sang not the pure tones of the Silthari, not the perfect notes Ilara had taught her. She sang like a human, raw, imperfect, full of cracks and hope. The core shuddered. The Emperor staggered. What is this? It's called choice, Lila said between notes. Her voice rose, not loud but true. It carried every memory, every loss, every moment she had ever loved. The core began to crack. No, the Emperor roared. He charged at her. But Nyx leaped in his path, taking the blow meant for Lila. The dragon fell. Lila screamed, her song breaking for a moment. Then she saw Nyx's eyes. They held no fear, only trust. Finish it. She took a breath and sang again, this time with everything. The core Split open light poured out not red but white, pure and blinding. The Emperor howled as the light touched him, his form unraveling like smoke and wind. "You are just a girl," he whispered, "and you have never heard a human sing." The core imploded. Not with fire, but with silence. Absolute and total. The chamber collapsed around them. Alara dragged Lila away as the fortress began to fall apart. Nyx did not move. His body glowed, then dissolved into stardust, his essence rising into the silence. They barely made it to the shuttle as they launched. The black hole sealed behind them, swallowing the fortress hole on the bridge of the Dusk Runner. The crew watched in awe. The Crother fleet fell apart, ship by ship, turning to dust without a sound. The war was over, but Lila did. Not cheers. He sat in the corner, her hands shaking, her eyes empty. Alara knelt beside her. "He is not gone. He is part of the song now." Lila looked up. "I felt him leave, but you carry him too." She touched Lila's chest right here. Lila closed her eyes and heard, not a whisper, but a hum steady and warm like a heartbeat, like home. In the days after the fortress fell, the Dusk Runner drifted through quiet space. No alarms. No enemy signals. Just the soft hum of its own engines, and the slow breathing of a crew, learning how to hope again. The Crothar Empire had not just been defeated. It had unraveled like a thread pulled from old cloth, their ships gone. Their outposts silent, their name already fading into myth. Lila stayed in her quarters. Most of the time she did not speak much. She did not need to. Everyone understood she carried a weight no one else could see. It was not grief alone, it was change. She had sung the final note, and in doing so had become something new. Not fully human, not fully Silthari, but something in between, a bridge that had held when the world broke. Alara visited her each evening. They sat together in silence, sometimes for hours. Nyx was gone, but his presence lingered in the air like warmth after a fire, in the way the ship's lights dimmed when Lila was tired, or how the calm static softened when she walked past on night. Lila spoke. "I hear the stars now." Alara nodded. "They have always sung. You just needed to remember how to listen. Do you think there are others like me? Maybe not like you. But echoes exist in many forms. Your song woke something out there." Lila looked out the viewport at the endless dark. "What do we do now, Liv?" That seemed too simple, but Alara meant it. The war is over, but life is not a war, it is a song, and yours is just beginning. The crew held a meeting in the mess hall. No uniforms, no ranks, just people who had survived something impossible. Captain Dunn stood at the front, his face softer than before. "We lost good people," he said, "but we also found something worth keeping, each other, and maybe something more." He looked at Lilawe. "We're told to explore, to defend, to conquer, but no one ever said we should listen." A murmur moved through the room. "So what now?" someone called out. "We go home." Another voice. "Home is gone for some of us." "Then we make a new one." Lila stood. "He say we keep flying. Not to fight, but to learn. To listen," Alara added. The room fell quiet. Then Tanner raised his hand. "Say we rename the ship." "Why?" "Because it deserves a name that means something." "What do you suggest?" The silence after. Everyone turned to Lila. She explained after. "The loudest sound comes the deepest quiet. That is where you hear truth. That is where you heal." Dunn smiled. "The silence after it is." Work began right away. The old name was stripped from the hull. New letters were welded in place. Simple, clean, strong. The crew painted them by hand. Each stroke a promise. Lila spent more time on the observation deck. Now she no longer dreamed of burning cities. Instead, she saw new ones rising on green worlds. She heard songs from planets no human had ever visited, and she understood them. Alara chose to stay. When asked why, she simply said, "My people are gone. But my purpose is not." She began teaching the crew, not just about resonance, but about balance, about listening before speaking, about silence as a gift. Not. Avoidnix was never forgotten. A small crystal was placed in the heart of the ship, shaped like a dragon curled in sleep. It glowed faintly blue and warm to the touch. One evening, Lila stood alone on the deck, watching a distant star flicker back to life after centuries of dimness. Alara joined her. "You are ready for what? To sing your own song, not mine, not your mother's, not the core's yours." Lila took a breath and hummed a single note, soft and steady. The star pulsed in time. She smiled. Somewhere out there, another echo waited, another bridge, another song, and this time it would be hers.